Welcome back to another episode of The Obscure Arc. Today, or on this episode, to be more correct, we're going to be talking about a show called Death Parade. And this was my first watch for Jared this month. And with that being said, I'm here with my regular co-host.
You keep sounding like you're
Jared.
plotting to get rid of me. Regular. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
One day it's going to be unregular.
Okay.
Or like Jared no more. No, jokes aside, I kind of pulled this one out of my old like archives that I remembered watching back when I was basically a teen, because that Death Billiards, which is the movie, almost like a
Just short film.
like a short film, but it's also kind of like a showcase project to this show in a way. Was made in 2016.
13.
13. Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, I was in my young teens, I guess. That being said, I am kind of curious watching the show, and then from what I'm aware, you also watched the movie short film as well. So what's your like initial thoughts, impact on you, stuff like that?
I mean, I think anytime I'm handed a Madhouse production, I'm usually pretty happy. Like, I think Madhouse delivers on a pretty consistent quality. They're not my favorite studio, don't get me wrong, but I think Madhouse does very specific things that I enjoy, and how they do action, and how I think they do very, very cinematic like shows pretty consistently. Like, they usually will lean towards the side of cinematic stuff, even if that's not my style. I do really appreciate the perspective that I get from them. And yeah, I mean, this show's very, despite seeming raw and like uncensored and aggressive of like, death, this is the world, like, this is how life and death is decided, and this is where you're going. These are the games we play. It's relatively safe and quaint. Like it's really weird to describe like, Death Parade and, even the show like Death Billiards like this, but it is relatively like Monster of the Week comfy kind of like, if you enjoy the vibe of the show, it's pretty cool, and like you just get to live in it. I think that's the nice thing.
Yeah, that I do definitely see the Monster of the Week vibes coming from it as well. And yeah, certainly like going back to when I first like heard Death Billiards and then like Death Parade like coming up as a show, I don't know, it feels like it would have been much more gory. From the naming is one of the first things that I take away from a title like this, where it's not. I do think that every now and then it definitely becomes more intense on the subject it's handling. Not for every week or every episode for sure, but every now and then it checks those boxes where it's like a bit more fucked up than the other episodes.
Yeah, this show is simultaneously incredibly edgy, but also not as edgy as you think it would be.
Yeah.
Like that, it draws a really weird, like not like straight line. It's like a squiggly line of what it's willing to be edgy and weird about, of like, you're throwing darts, and these darts are going to be corresponding to your organs and blah, pain. And then there's other times where it's like, this is going to be talking about this person's life in a very quaint, realistic manner. It's a bizarre, like, up and down you're feeling most episodes. Like, it is like, it is categorized as a psycho thriller. I would not say this is necessarily a psycho thriller, but there are feelings related to it being kind of like a psycho thriller.
Yeah, I feel like they're trying to get you to the thriller part because of like characters like, going through certain emotional fluctuations every now and then.
Oh yeah.
Within the games and stuff. But I do kind of agree on that, like, assessment where it's not so much thriller. I'd even argue like the slight thriller parts we do see happens not even between the people that are being questioned, but like the executors as in like staff. Let's call them staff.
Yeah, the arbiters and whatnot.
The arbiters and like the managers and stuff like that, archivers, like their interactions tend to have a bit more thriller to them than the episodic characters, and we see the episodic characters much more than like Steph. I
Yeah, it's
guess.
weird. Like these characters, like the episodic characters, are, like really fucking in your face all the time. Whereas like not all the time, like for the episode they're in. Whereas like the staff, like and all the arbiters and all the rest of the people, in the world of Queen Deckham and the various bars, I guess. They're like you see them for like a minute per episode at most.
Exactly.
They're very passive in all of this.
It's not enough content for it to push the thriller
Yeah.
title or like classification there, but again, it has its certain moments. I did like the bar settings quite a lot, but I don't know how you felt about that.
I quite literally wrote down in my notes set design good, and that was it. Like, I like how they're all very contrasting, and I think the biggest thing is how morphable the different settings are. Like I think there's a lot of thought behind like what we might traditionally call like the art department and the art design behind it. This is an anime original, and there's like a lot of things that then become more important. Like for example, like I think how they build out like the arcade game and how that looks, and how also I think how the bowling alley specifically how that looks. I think there's a lot of clear thought behind the vision of what is supposed to be felt from a visual on-screen standpoint, beyond just the intense moments. Like it's like this is what I want this game of billiards or this game of darts or bowling to feel like. It's not just darts; it is darts with these like little touches and kind of absurdities to them.
That is, yeah. I do feel like, even though at some moments I do feel like the basic design of certain things try to start to like reintroduce themselves here and there. I do agree that there's a decent amount of thought being put into what we see on the screen. I also do. I didn't mention this to you before. I did appreciate the jellyfish.
Oh yeah.
In Queen Deckham's bar. I do like jellyfishes as animals in general. So, and I did genuinely like kind of felt a bit sad when the jellyfish aquarium cracked for the first time, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
like you have to
come
put
on.
the caveat of the first time.
Yeah,
Because it happens
exactly.
repeatedly over and over again.
But yeah, I feel like it's a pretty cool overall production, especially looks wise. With that conversation, I kind of do want to lead us into production details because they did a good job. And like we mentioned, this is by Studio Madhouse. The movie Death Billiards did come out in 2013, but the show itself, Death Parade, was released on winter 2015. So there's a 2-year split between the two. Madhouse, if y'all are not familiar with at this point, made some other minute anime
couple.
series. Yeah,
A few.
Like the most popular anime newbie series that everyone watches, Death Note, One Punch Man season 1 specifically, Hunter x Hunter 2011, Freyren, Monster, Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Satoshi Kon's multiple works. Is it all of his works?
Pretty positive it's all of them.
Satoshi Kon's all of his works. Tatami Galaxy, Orb on the Movements of Earth, and I will keep saying this every time we mention this anime. It's one of the shows that made us start doing this podcast. It's produced by VAP, Dax Production, Nippon Television Network. It is licensed by Funimation.
Shout outs to a real one out there.
Exactly.
Shout outs to a real one.
It's in a better place now, y'all. Watching us over. But with that, I do kind of wanna. I will address that actually later on, but it being fun animation kind of shifts our position for this anime, as in how we watch it. But it's an anime original created by director Yuzuru Tachikawa, and the first approach or first take of this original was the Billiards Movie, which was a 25-minute short film. The music was done by Yuki Hayashi, which, he does really good stuff. Some less popular stuff he did is My Hero Academia, Haikyuu, Run with the Wind, Sakamoto Days, Vistoria, Medalist, Insomniacs After Dark, and the upcoming The One Piece.
I don't know how this guy does it, but he gets a couple of big gigs here and there.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite literally, like I don't know if I would say My Hero is the biggest anime of like 2015 to 2025, but if it's in the top 3 probably.
Most definitely.
And then Haikyuu, it's still like top 10.
Dude,
and then,
it took over sports anime scene.
Yes, but I'm saying like you're comparing it to like Attack on Titan. That's the only thing. I'm just comparing it to like literally shows that came out during that time period. And I'm like, yeah, Attack on Titan also is in that conversation. So it's like it's at least in the top 10. But
no, for sure.
Yeah, Hayashi gets some ginormous big music. I will say you don't feel his music as much in this one. You do feel it, but it's not like if you expect it to feel like Haikyuu or My Hero, where it's kind of like it plays like the number 2 and even the number 1 in some scenes of like how important. Like you won't get that in this show.
No, it's much more environmental.
Yeah,
it kind of like feeds into the feel you're trying to get or they're trying to give you when you see like Dekim's bar or like Ginty's bar or like other environments within the world that will come up in topic further down the line. But it's still good music, Sound director is going to be Satoshi Motoyama. And he did other work in shows like Oregairu, Maid-sama, Irregular at Magic High, From the New World, Mashal, and 91 Days, which I personally did watch like a bit of Mashal and then 91 Days out of this list. 91's Days sound design and directory is pretty good, and I do feel like he carried that quality to Death Parade with this project. So that is a strong suit of this show. Director is, like we mentioned, Yuzuru Tachikawa, and he did direct Mob Psycho before.
Enough said. That's all you need to know about this guy. Yeah. He did Mob Psycho. All of Mob Psycho directed. Enough said.
Yeah, which is not the most.
That's all you need as a resume. That's all you need as a resume, my guy.
He also did Decadence, Blue Giant, Detective Conan movie 22 to 26.
Just 22 and 26. I know Detective Conan movies are like there's a fucking billion of them.
I thought he did all the movies between those 2 years. Then the 22 movie and the 26 movie. And World's End. He also did storyboarding and episode directing in some other shows like Attack on Titan, Sword Art Online, Steins Gate, Bleach, Kill la Kill, Yuri on Ice, Chihaya Furu, CSM, or like Chainsaw Man movie Rez. And now we're talking about how you can watch this by your own resources and any means necessary is going to be the answer. This, when you search it in Crunchyroll, it definitely pops up.
Yeah, it exists.
But there's no episodes to it under the banner. So unfortunately, you can't watch it.
So for those of you who are like newer to anime, I can't remember exactly when this happened, but like if you
2 years ago, 3 years ago, Funimation?
A while ago. No. Much.
Maybe it was before, like maybe 2020-ish, right around COVID.
Maybe. I'm going to look up exactly of when that is, or if you can do so, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But like Crunchyroll and like Funimation went into Crunchyroll, and there was this idea of like, oh, we have all of your licenses now, like properly, like, everything's going to fall under us and it's going to be great. Like there's no problems with licensing at all. Like,
24.
It was 24?
Yeah, April 24. Dang.
Really?
Well, it's the completion.
Oh, no. When it initially happened.
Yeah.
Because it happened in phases. Like, yeah, okay, the Funimation initially shut down.
It started in 21, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this was a long process. It was a messy process. It was a gross process of Funimation got killed in 2021. I remember it's 2021. You know why? Because I was watching Horimiya, and I was watching Link Click on Funimation, and they killed it during that time period.
They started merging like series in 2022 apparently.
Okay, yeah, I remember they like
Disgusting.
I was going back to watch shows that I'd watched
Yeah.
from 2021 that got killed. I remember that's what happened, and I was really bothered by it. But yeah, basically this is a fuckload of licensing messes because just because the distributor exists does not mean you are the licensor. That is a very like clear, distinct thing. And so basically all of the people have to agree to the contract on the hundreds, if not thousands of anime that exist on Funimation that yes, we're going to move to Crunchyroll with the same payment, same agreement, and this is all going to exist and it's going to be fine. That did not happen. And so shows like Death Parade kind of got left on the wayside. Like it's just really annoying and dumb. But it did happen, and it was just a very, very messy merger. Like now, Funimation on as of April 2024 is like completely closed, dead, nothing doesn't exist. And rest in peace, Funimation. You weren't perfect, but you were something that I did care about. It's just yeah, it was a not fun time, and there are shows even like not just Death Parade, like that got left behind of like no one ever figured out in a full agreement on like
Yeah.
a license like between the distributor.
No,
and all
there's
that.
definitely more shows than you think.
Lots of movies. It's a lot of movies.
Oh, yeah, movies usually get swept away the easiest, unfortunately, and then niche shows. So yeah, you have to find your own solution to watching it, but when you do, it is a nice one to watch. As far as this show, it's basically like a relatively like dark toned story, as in I'd almost say it's a dark world, almost afterlife. The whole premise about this is basically one of our main characters, Dekim, kind of questioning the meaning of life or death or even journey after death, because he happens to be a judge who dictates whether you go to the pit, or they also call it hell, or you get to reincarnate, which they call it heaven, so that humans within their limited terms can understand. And he's like, what is life to begin with? What is death to begin with? And where do we stand in that journey to be able to judge what's going to happen to the soul after what they've been through in their life? It's, like I said, in a much like visually darker setting.
Quite literally, like half the shots, if not, no, definitely more than half the shots are in shadow.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
insane.
A lot of shadow works happening there. It's in moments eerie, kind of, but like a cool, chill, like bar setting. For whatever reason, all the judges are just like bartenders. They
Yeah.
all love bars. So you see different bars, different places throughout the show. And we were just talking about this, but it's more on the like it says by definition psychological thriller, but like the thriller part is here and there. It's much more like psychological, and then maybe like drama ish.
It's a weird category because it's like half the time we're peering into these characters' lives, and it's like kind of like a slice of life looking at their moment.
Exactly.
Like weirdly enough, like one of the shows that I do want to compare this to a bit is Link Click.
Link Click,
Like, this
yeah.
is really weirdly like I know Link Click is like what, but you're just taking pictures and like going traveling back in time. Like part of it is like at the end of the day, these are episodic things exploring their time with a specific character's life and kind of those details, and usually often how it leads to either their death or downfall or something of the sort, and kind of the human emotions and details in between. Like that is what the show's about. So I would argue there is an element of slice of life to it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too, but it's always in the sense of like flashbacks and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily the characters like the main characters themselves going through day-to-day lives. Not that much. Like there are episodes like that, but more so that we get to watch people who end up in that bar's lives before they passed.
Yeah, the reason I would hesitate to call this a drama specifically is like there's not a lot of dramatic things you hold between episodes, and so like I feel like
That
dramas
is true.
kind of sit more to that. If you called it a drama, I wouldn't hate it. It doesn't feel right, you know?
Yeah, I guess because it does not carry between episodes. It's like something that's emotionally like more like extreme happens within certain moments of the episode, but then the rest is pretty chill in that way. So yeah, there's not a lot of actual drama happening where you're like, oh, like what are they gonna do this situation? What are they gonna do about this situation next episode? Like it's resolved. Someone's in the pit and the other one is reincarnating. Like,
Yeah, it does play off that monster of the week. You know, expected outcomes are supposed to be met. Like that
Yeah.
is part of the formula that is involved with it.
yeah. With that portion out of the way, I do feel like the art is pretty nice. I do like, weirdly enough, how much they use shadows. Like they do kind of dig the dark visual theme of this show a lot. Because weirdly enough, it's dark, but you can't see shit. In a lot of anime, I feel like when it's dark, you can't see stuff.
I will say this is one of the very few anime that will do this in a not edgy way, but in a slightly more cinematic way of hiding things in shadow. Like I always appreciate and find interesting when a show or movie, especially when it's like animated and not like traditionally like lit, will choose to hide things in shadow, like similar to like a noir type look. And it's always like, oh, this is how we used to do cinematography, or like this is like an extreme example of cinematography. And I find it, I do enjoy when it's kind of like, you know, character comes out of character comes out of shadow, or like some information is shown from shadow and it kind of reveals a bit more, especially when it's not used a ton, because it's not used a ton in this show.
Yeah.
And so I do think that one of the big things that does stick out to me is that the way they use shadow is like multifaceted. It's not a show that's dark just to be dark for no reason. Like I do think part of it is for setting and mood, but also part of it is that they play with it a bit.
Yeah.
I in general, like the production is just like really like like it's Madhouse. It's very top notch overall.
Yeah, it's like the overall animation, everything that's basically happening from a studio standpoint is actually really smooth and well appreciated by me for sure, and I'm assuming somewhat by Jared. With that, let's talk about a bit more, or actually, yeah, I do kind of want to impose this question to you, but like, was there anything specific that, like, first of all, what portions did you like in general about like the storytelling and like the directory of the story? Like, is there anything that's appealing, or like anything that you felt lackluster, like for this, story in general, like stuff like that?
I mean, anytime you have like Monster of the Week is not generally not my cup of tea, and I think the weird thing is that the episodic stuff doesn't feel like it carries over like how it does in Link Lick, where it's like, oh, these are things that are infecting Cheng Xiaoxi a ton, where it's like I see the stuff with Chiyuki and Desham, and it feels like a lot of things bounce off of them, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's the way this show is supposed to be. I think the thing that sticks with you as like the first impression when you watch episode 1 of this show is you see like a fucking dart fly, and it's like, and it's like, oh, we're doing this. Like, I think that's a very standout point of the show is the desire for kineticism and over the top anime-ness. Like, this is a very over the top anime show.
Yeah.
And like, I won't lie, this is a show that was premised probably like by a 13-year-old and then fleshed out in a bit more. Not that it's a bad thing, but it is like a bit edgy. And like, what if you went to death, but instead of going to death, you went to a bar and they judged you for how bad or good, like, you know what I mean? It's like it's a bit much, but
Were you a bad kid?
it's just kind of like, ew. It's just like, wow, this is like the type of shit that you cook up when you're like, oh man, this is great. And then you look at it the next, like, after 2 years and you're like embarrassed to show people. You're like, oh, why did I think of that? Not that I think the thing is that they commit to the idea.
Yeah.
They present it in a way that is like, a well thought out world, even if they don't let us to explore it. And a big thing that they do is that the even though the episodic characters don't stick with us, they are explored well enough and like kind of like allow us and explored from different angles. Like I think the thing that makes me stick to Death Parade more is actually how they make episode 1 and episode 2 literally just the same thing from different perspectives. I think that goes, oh, okay, so this is something I should be watching more closely because it's going to be different angles, there's different things I'm looking for. Like I was like, all right, I'm ready. This is what I should be looking for when I'm seeing these judgments and all these games going on.
Okay, yeah, that is actually a decent point because they do it a few more times after that. Like you don't get a lot of like characters that like stay for more than one episode, but you do have them here and there. And when it's stories like that, I feel like it was much more intricate and like detailed and like gave you like different approaches from different like perspectives, basically.
Yeah, I feel like all the cases are like interesting enough. Like that's the thing. They're all like interesting enough. I would say like they're definitely planned to not last more than an episode unless it's like a 2-arc one specifically.
Yeah.
Like I would say like in comparison to Link Click, like Link Clicks are like really well thought out human characters that you could almost feel like you could spend a lifetime with them. Or like, you know, it's a bit of a stretch, but like it really feels like these are lived in characters. Whereas this feels like they're more scenarios. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting scenario I'm in. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's engage with this so far. And then kind of once it plays all of its cards, you're kind of done with it. And like the only difference is that in episode 1 to episode 2, they just don't play all the cards because you see it from Chiyuki's perspective. You see the stuff with like, you know, oh, the wife was not actually showing everything. Like, you know, you're really seeing that. But the second you kind of like watch the next few games, you can like, I get it. Now I see why it's not going to be a longer thing.
Yeah. For me, one of the things with how they do that like monster of the week kind of thing, like a thing that helped me kind of, or not helped me, but made me like the show, is kind of like hidden within that logic of monster of the week, where it tackles different subjects like Link Click, you know, like with every customer, I guess. You do get to look into another person's life and what they've been through in a sense, and specifically Death Parade's case, because I do agree, like Link Click, even when they go into the pictures, like they come from a more like early on like time in their life into their death, where it's like in Death Parade it's usually like right before their last moments only.
Yeah, it works in a reverse in a weird way, yeah.
Yeah, but regardless of that portion of it, us tackling different subjects, and as far as the things we see on the screen, them being like relatively unfiltered and kind of like realistic in a sense, like things that probably everyone, for most of them, not all of them, but like for most of them, things that probably like everyone goes through in their own lives one way or another, or like can experience similar situations, is like a selling point for me when it comes to shows like this.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain rawness to it. Like I definitely think like it lacks the details of Link Click, but it does have a rawness to it that comes up with like even by episode 1, but like I think you really start to notice it by like especially with the stuff with like the mom and the like, I think he's adopted kid, right? I believe he's adopted, right? Yeah. Because he's like, I want him to call me mom. Yeah. So it's like that stuff. I think it gets more and more raw, and it kind of builds over time, and it's definitely like a momentum that builds to it. My thing is that it's like I think sometimes I wish that it would, like, so Monster of the Week for me, I'm most interested in Monster of the Week when it sets up a formula and then challenges and does weird things with the formula. Whereas I think in general, Death Parade sticks to its formula of like they're gonna remember their memories at this moment. And it's kind of like, they're not like predictable, but they're not like surprising in nature of how they remember their memories. And I kind of am like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it feels like I'm just nodding my head along sometimes. I think that sometimes I can lose a little bit of interest in the later stuff because, well, I mostly like these episodic characters. I think I personally lose interest in Monster of the Week because I know I don't have anything further with them or care about them. And when when
True.
their stuff kind of bounces off characters a bit more, I'm kind of just like, right, anyways, and I'm just nodding along.
That is true. And I feel like they kind of felt the lack of that as well because they most certainly did add and like we'll break down furthermore whether like or how well it worked, but they did try to add more element to the show through characters like Dekim or like Chiyuki or other like side characters like Clavis or Ginty or Mayu or
I want to be very clear.
Nona. Yeah,
I love Chiyuki. I really like Chiyuki
yeah,
and how human she is. And even though we don't get a ton of details with her, I think what we see is authentic enough and enough for me. I am more bothered by sometimes my experience with Decim because Decim is like, I feel like he almost has like a factory reset between episodes, and that bothers
yeah.
me a bit more because I feel like what is premised in light spoiler right now, he's like a arbiter who has human emotions implanted into him, and I kind of wish that stuff plays earlier and earlier. Like I feel like definitely there are times where I'm kind of like there are reactions in some episodes that I don't feel like he's really there. And that sometimes will bother me. Like, I don't know. It really gets backloaded to a lot of these options of kind of like who he is as a character and a human and all that stuff.
So you don't necessarily think that they did that deliberately, and it's just like more so like a possibly a lack of decision making on production end.
Yeah, I think that it could be described as like indecisiveness with what we're doing with Decim in the early episodes because, like a lot of like, they're like, they do a lot of vague posting, I won't lie, about kind of like, oh, who is Decim for a little bit. And like Nona talks about like, oh, Decim's important, like talks about Decim being important and all this stuff. And I feel like, they mention it, relatively like early on, like episode 6 or something like that.
Yeah, something like
And
that.
it's just kind of like, okay, like, what are we building off of? And then it kind of rushes towards the end. And I'm kind of like, okay, like I did appreciate, I appreciate the narrative. I think the timing and pacing of it was like what didn't make sense to me. Like I was kind of like, oh, wow, we're here already. Like I feel like there's value in like building Decim up or like us getting hinted on like who Decim is before this, where I feel like I like the like there is a very small moment in like the bowling episode, and I'm kind of like, I wish there was more of that, and I wish the more examples of like the bowling episode of like he's confused as to why Chiyuki cares, but he's also interested in why Chiyuki cares, and kind of that relationship and stuff like that, and the lies that they're telling each other.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that was like, because his response is like humans are illogical. This doesn't make sense. Like that's a lot of people's like reaction to stuff, and I'm like, I get it. Like that's my thing.
Yeah, because the whole thing is the arbitrators are all like, and spoilers, are all like puppets in a way.
There's
Not
4 rules they must not do. I can't remember the 4 rules, but it's
yeah,
like they can't be human because
yeah,
those are pointless and like all
yeah.
that.
It's like they don't have feelings. They can't stop being like a. I always keep forgetting the role's name. Judge,
Arbiters.
arbiters. Yeah, they can't stop being arbiters. They can't die, and there's one more.
Whatever it is.
Like
Yeah.
yeah,
They
but
repeat it like a billion times. It kind of loses meaning.
yeah, it's um, but with that, like the whole idea behind this is like they can, regardless of all those rules that go for them, and their like basically existence, is still intrigued and in search for a true meaning and understanding of like life and death and experience. And he always like mentions this throughout the show where he's like, I have like the utmost respect for people who live their lives to the fullest
Oh
kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And he actively seeks, though I do agree on the part where like most scenes we see with him where he responds to stuff, or at the end of the episodes, like where they like have this very small interaction with Chiyuki, like if they actually wanted to push this narrative furthermore and like kind of like take it to the realm of making the audience feel like it's a much more important story, or like or like a portion of the story that's being told, they should have given them more time.
I think a
Like,
lot of Deckham's uh like ideology and like look at view towards humanity is from his words and not his actions. And I think you
yeah,
really notice that like he's still judging them. He doesn't hesitate. He like he kind of hesitates, not really. It's like a lot of that stuff does not stick in a way where it's kind of like I feel like I don't know. It does jump from 0 to like 100 kind of a bit near the end.
yeah,
I do like, again, I think the exploration of the nature of humanity is like pretty well written. And I think it's well basic. Like, and I think the thing for me is like I've seen this type of show before. And like quite literally, I'm like Link Click is a more holistic version of this type of thing to me. But
yes.
like it is well done. I just think it is very backloaded towards near the end. Like I truly love Chiyuki's whole journey. I love this stuff with her mom, even if it's again cliche, done before, whatever. I still really enjoy it. My problem is that I'm always just like, where was this like the first 4 episodes? Like it almost feels like 2 shows are kind of like coming together at the same time. Of kind of like, right, we need it to be a psycho thriller, kind of like fun, crazy game, but we do need to get to Chiyuki at some point, and like Chiyuki's story comes very backloaded near the end. Like it's weird. It's just like a little weird where I'm kind of like the show
Yeah.
clearly cares about Chiyuki, but didn't give her the time early enough with Deckham. It's bizarre.
Literally at the very end, it's like at the last 3 episodes or so, do you finally focus enough on like Chiyuki's humanity and where she stands and like the interactions with Dickham and stuff like that. So
Well, the bizarre thing is like there's like this whole world of like arbiters and like all this networking stuff that they like talk about and mention, but like that doesn't play
a huge
in
role,
relation
yeah.
to the end of the show, So it's kind of like, why was I even doing that? That's a big question I always kind of experience where it's
Yeah.
like, I found it interesting, but it's like, I mean, part of this is, to be fair, this show felt like it wanted a season 2. We'll talk a bit more about the ending at some, like, at the very
Yeah.
end, but like this show felt like it wanted a season 2, and it was like prepared to not get one, but like definitely desired one greatly, of
Yeah.
kind of like, these are going to be useful for later. And like all this way we're going to explain things. I could be wrong. I haven't heard any, statements from the director and stuff like that, but it does feel a bit weird sometimes when I'm kind of like, there's a lot of loose ends and a lot of things where I'm like,
Yeah.
why did we even spend time describing the memories and how they're made and all this stuff if we're not going to play with it a little?
Yeah, it certainly feels like it's either like a multiple season show or like the initial goal was to make this like a longer single season or something, and like they've definitely put in the ideas of like expanding, but then couldn't or didn't like conclude or explore them enough in a way. And we see that with different characters like Ginty and his cat.
Yeah, Ginty's weird.
Like he's an interesting character. He's almost in a sense the perfect soldier
Yeah.
in one way. Like doesn't question anything, doesn't like go against orders, just does what he does in regards to the task given to him until he doesn't, and then
But even then, like he doesn't have a moment of true defiance.
yeah, exactly.
Like that's the thing. It's like okay, well his cat left, and like he had like this thing with Mayu where it was kind of like a hesitancy, but nothing really,
yeah,
nothing manifested of it. I don't feel anything on the back end from it.
Yeah, he
right?
just like kind of almost felt intrigued, but then was like, at the end of the day, this is my order. And there's like other stuff, not necessarily like Ginty, but like Clavis's existence.
Clavis exists. That he is a character, and he
Yeah.
rides the elevator.
Like, that's weird. Like, there's no establishment of him or like,
I mean, I don't need establishment. I just need him to be used for something.
yeah, exactly.
My guy
Like,
gets, and spoiler, he gets his like fucking memories like drained out of him, and then it's like, this is what has happened. Yes, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's a thing that can happen, I guess. And now that's Clavis's usage in the show. Like he does nothing beyond that,
Yeah,
which I find like weird.
he just knows stuff. And then there's like the whole dynamic between like Nona and Oculus.
Oh, that's his name. Yeah, Oculus. Yeah, the Rose guy, old man,
Yeah, the weird dude with
flower power.
yeah, like size shifting
No, it's like
hair and beard.
yeah,
No,
it's like
'cause-
flowers.
Yeah, but like his hair gets shorter when he like grows his chin,
Yeah.
and like his chin.
Flower power.
It's weird. It's hella weird. But like, there's that dynamic where, and Nona, just to give some context, is like the first level of managing like person they
Middle
have.
manager.
Yeah, middle manager that oversees the floors and like what everyone does for their own like bar and stuff like that. But obviously, from the conversations, very few conversations she has with Oculus, you see that they like have different opinions towards like specific topics and why they exist to begin with, and are they allowed to feel emotions and stuff like that. And it goes as far as to provide some like thrillery moment between the two, but then he's just like, well, you know what, like, you'll see it for yourself.
It's like boom, intense close up. Wow.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is I'm kind of like, I think Nona's stand is interesting near the end of the show, but I'm always questioning like why Nona. That's the thing. Is I'm kind of like
Yeah, because we do keep seeing the children's book that she reads that also is from like
it's like
Chiyuki?
Chavo,
Yeah,
whatever.
Chavo.
Yeah.
But like there's no elaborate like reasoning to why she is interested in the topic, and like why she picks up Chavo and like kind of puts all of it into Dekim.
Like the weird thing about the whole like with Nona's situation is that Nona does not take a stand in the show until like the very end. And it's kind of like we don't understand what her motives are. Again, this could be solved by a season 2. Maybe they were like there's deep interviews of like, yes, we planned on a season 2, and it's like, or season 3 even. And weirdly enough, the show was like really popular, but very much like a flash in the pan of like it happened, and then no one else talked about it ever again. But like she makes her stand, and I'm kind of just like, okay, but why? Why do I care about Nona? Why do I care about, or even if I don't care about Nona, why do I care about why you're doing this? And what is the greater like not geopolitics, but like just the politics of this underworld / afterlife type stuff? And it kind of gets left unsaid. Like again, lots of loose ends near it. So it's like, not that anything is bad or wrong with these, like the stuff that happens in Death Parade. I'm kind of just like, you're left uncertain and not in a place where you can like truly care about it. Cause I do truly think that the ending of the stuff and the stuff with Chiyuki is well done. I think it is well done, but it's like not properly built towards and then like allowed to breathe near the end. It kind of just goes bang. And then you got a big bang and it's kind of it.
Yeah, it's almost like I really do like the Chiyuki's whole arc at the last like 2-3 episodes.
Yeah,
like,
you want to talk about like later spoilers, like ending spoilers more or less right now?
yeah, we can't get into that portion basically, but like how she basically starts rediscovering her life and like kind of looking back at ice skating and her relationship and her humanity. I did personally enjoy that portion a lot, where I do agree it's not paced well enough to be expecting that kind of turn, but it was a pleasant turn at the very least. But how, like, what was your approach? Because there's also like definitely like interactions from Dekim's end with that ending too. So
first of all, I had clocked from the beginning. I think most people probably could, not most, but like a decent number of people. Like when you see her and like she retained her memories, and I'm just like, I know another character commits suicide, but I'm like, suicide. I was like, there must be some relation to suicide or something weird where it's like how her death was circumstanced and probably suicide, why she retains her memories and then gets her memories erased. I think that her journey and her whole self-discovery, and I think the stuff with her mom is a bit on the nose, but it is very authentic and very real. Like the whole premise of Death Parade, what kind of like, at least season 1, we'll say season 1 because I kind of feel like there should be more, is that everyone is somebody to someone, right? Like that's the whole thing that kind of gets played on, and kind of why she chooses to not go back to life is like, I could not take someone else's life for my own because I'm just someone else, And I think that's like a big premise of it. And again, I've heard this before, but I do think it's done in a, like, I feel like we're running into a lot this month of like, I don't love how we got into this scenario, but I do think the scenario is done well. Where it's kind of like, oh yeah, I think the details of like, how much she misses her mom. Because like I felt something in that scene of like how much she so desperately wants to be back with her mom, but knows it's like morally wrong for her to do so. Like she made her choice and she should have valued life more and all this stuff. And kind of like she's regretting it all, but it's okay because at least she gets to like, feel and care about it now, right? Like, that's the whole reason why because part of it is like, that is one half of like why she doesn't go back. Like she doesn't want to kill someone. Yeah. The other half that is kind of unspoken, but I think pretty clearly there is that the memories she has right now, because they talk about you would lose all your memories. The memories she has right now are valuable. And like, the lessons she learns now are valuable. And she shouldn't get rid of those solely to come back to life. Like there are things weirdly enough more valuable than life to her at this point in time.
That is true.
Like, and I think like, I almost tell people that it's like, this happens all the time. This happened weirdly enough in Seasons of Blossom of like, even if you would have known you could have saved my life in this moment, prevented me from killing myself, that would have not stopped me from doing it. Mm-hmm. It would have just delayed it. And I think that's kind of a little bit of the untold storytelling is like, she was someone who was kind of like doomed mentally and that she needed to find her way out. And the only way she could do it was actually through Queen Decim and Decim himself of like kind of seeing how other people matter to other people and how she herself should value her own life. Like, I think that was required of her to be able to go back and enjoy life. Despite being dead. And I think that's like, the sad dramatic irony of it. The stuff with Decim, it's really, him crying was really in my face and it was like the world was shattering. I was
Dude,
like,
I'm not gonna
man.
lie. As much as I like enjoy this anime and like have fun with all the premise and designs and characters and stuff, Decim crying and then continuing his life as if literally not a single fuck happened within those like 2 minutes was kind of like I totally forgot about that part, to be honest. Going back to this like series, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah.
Like his crying part. So I was like, wait, this feels like weird.
I think so. My philosophy on like especially specifically crying and writing, because people a lot use it, is your goal should never be to be crying. Like that's never the goal of like the crying, the big crescendo. This is not crying is not the crescendo.
Yeah.
Or like if it is the crescendo, there's music that follows.
Yeah.
Right. Like this cannot be the thing and the big thing and then you're done. I think Death Parade kind of saw it like that, and because of that, it feels weird.
Yeah, because every now and then, you see like very brief moments where he goes to his heart with his hand.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so we're gonna have a big like moment. And I'd argue it could have been better if, in spoilers, they have a certain design to their eyes. And
it's so edgy.
Yeah.
So edgy.
And when like Decim cries and gains some human emotion briefly within that moment, his eyes change too. Like, I don't know what they could have done, but if they like kind of altered the design a little bit after that moment,
yeah,
I could have still been like, okay, that's at least
in that
achieving something,
In that moment, I thought he had just no longer become an arbiter. Like, I understand, like, why it doesn't do that and yada, yada, yada. I thought that's what the thing was, like, he lost his status, like, he's now a human or some shit like that. And I understand why it doesn't go that route, and I think it's fine to not go that route. It's just that moment really loses weight quickly.
Yeah.
Right? It does lose weight a bit quickly, and I think a big reason why is kind of because it wasn't built up that well, and then you kind of go, ooh, and it's like a big kind of not, like, again, it makes sense from the writing perspective, but it does not feel like you should be there with Decim at that moment of like crying and like literally the world is shattering and like all this crazy stuff. Like I wasn't there with Decim. I was there with Chiyuki. I really felt what Chiyuki was going through. Even if it was a bit fast, I was like, damn, I feel that.
I did end up feeling a lot of Chiyuki's like moments within like previous episodes as well.
Oh, yeah, she's so human.
Where she would like just basically lose herself in distress when she saw like what the serial killers are going through, or like what the first married couple and the wife was going through, like all that stuff, like during like her interactions with the situation at hand felt like good to me. But like whenever Decim came into play, which arguably is a really big portion of the premise itself, those usually kind of felt a bit off.
Weirdly enough, they don't have great chemistry. You will rarely say that about a show that has like two primaries, but like in comparison to other shows we've seen that have like, if we're comparing it to like shows like Lico Rico, they don't have the chemistry of like Lico Rico. Like they feel like they are rubbing up like, and not even that they don't have chemistry. It's not like when they rub up against each other, you produce something. They kind of just are existing within the same space.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention about episode 1 that I actually really liked about episode 1 was that, the whole thing into episode 2 is kind of like, it's like a Decim kind of fucks up and kind of like this whole like interesting take of like, oh, I guess this is how bad people get let back into the afterlife and all this stuff is like, this is a flawed process. But a big thing for me about like, Chiyuki's undeniable humanity, like really builds like, I think that's enough for me to care about her in the later episode. I think that's a good point that you have is like, that's enough. Even if I would have preferred slightly differently. I do care about Chiyuki. I do care about how she is in the moment, but like Decim does not get there for me. And that's the big thing that separates her from Chiyuki. Like Chiyuki's last ice skate thing and like the tragic crash. Like I really felt that. I think the music was phenomenal in that scene.
The music was actually, I wasn't expecting that.
Well, the music's weird, right? Because the music starts very tragic.
Yeah.
Like very like I think you've heard the song before a couple of times in the show, but it's like a very tragic song, and then it builds and it's like a crescendo and a celebration of life, and then it crashes back down.
Yeah.
And I really like enjoyed that. I thought it was so. It felt like her journey through life, where it was like there was a celebration and a beautiful point of life, but ultimately it was tragedy and it ends in a crash. And I also really like how it could have been done a bit more, but like her relationship with ice skating and how she wasn't sad about the ability to lose and escape. It was a disconnect between people that like people do not understand what she has experienced now. It's like she lost her form of expression, and people do not understand that. Like or like kind of like how isolated. She's like it's less that she can't escape, but more she has no window back into the world type thing in the same way. And I think, it really hurts. I will say I've seen like several shows that are very emotional about ice skating now. It feels like the default sports of you want a character to be emotional, ice skating, perfect. Like Yuri on Ice does it, MyAnimeList does it. Like a lot of great shows like do use it as like the emotional sport. It's great for it, don't get me wrong, and it's a very beautiful sport, but I was like, right. This is like, to be sure we got it. It's like it is ice skating, the sport of defined beauty type shit.
Yeah, that is true. Well, it works.
It does work. I'm not like disagreeing with that, but it is kind of like right. That does make sense.
Yeah, no. I do kind of, now that you've pointed it out, it does feel like a default choice to hit some emotional notes for sure. What did you think in general about like, was there any, and this is just me asking out of curiosity, but was there any like specific like episode or like a story that picked your attention more than the others or something like that?
Ooh, probably the one that was sticks out the most is definitely the two like childhood friends. Like I think the bowling, first of all like the look of that like bowling alley, and second of all I just was like, I think it was I like the bittersweetness of it all. I think I appreciate that, whereas I feel like everything else was like a bit more like tragic and anguish and I'm sad that I'm dead. Whereas that one was kind of like an almost like at least we got to spend time together.
That is true.
I felt like that was the one that took the different perspective, while the others felt very much the same. Like what was like your preference of it? Because for me, that was the one that stuck out like a lot.
I feel like we're kind of on the same page, but for me, it was like the one with the old lady where they played the cards.
Oh, old maid at the very end. Yeah.
Yeah, where she like, was just grateful that she had the chance to go through his or her own like character creations one more time and kind of, be able to appreciate her husband, and like she's a mangaka, y'all, so like her characters and stories and stuff like that once again, and like, she just thanked away. And
I will say that episode does feel like the budget cut episode because they only showed it on the cards.
That is true.
I was like, I was kind of hoping that one would be a slightly more bigger expressions type
like
shit.
with the what do you call it? Gav, the fictional character in the anime. Chavo, yeah.
Yeah, Chavo.
Like Chavo stories where like the first time it was mentioned, it was like, on the screen, like more animated.
Well, like, even think about this, like the fighting game, the amount of effort they put in the fighting game was kind of insane considering that's closer to like the jokier episode. Like it's not jokey completely, don't get me wrong, but it is like the more like...
It takes a harsh turn.
Yeah, it takes a harsh turn very quickly, very like, oh, Jesus Christ. But it is like the episode that is more lighthearted in comparison in terms of like how it starts and the premise and like, oh, this is just a reality TV show, haha.
Yeah.
Like that. Like they put a lot of effort into that and not into the mangaka stuff. So it felt like weird. That definitely.
It definitely feels weird. I feel like they kind of cut that part relatively short because they kind of want to like kick off with like Chiyuki's focus. Um, but I don't know, something about her being like the way she carried herself and kind of just like you said, like the couple. I think that couple would probably be my like second favorite episode.
I think it's the only one that leaves you with mixed feelings. I think the
Yeah.
rest kind of go like, oh well, that sucked.
The serial killer one I enjoyed, but it was definitely really fucked up in multiple ways.
For me, it was just kind of like, oh, we're really indulging into the fucked up nature of humanity here.
Yeah,
Like it really
exactly.
felt indulgent of like, oh yes, we're going into it further and further.
Yeah. And I could argue like that was a fun episode in general, but
It has a good visual of like him being hung up, and he has some line was kind of like,
yeah.
oh geez, what was the line? It was some really aggressive, like edgy line that I was like very like, oh my god, that's so over the top. But oh yeah, people can't understand others. It was like something like that, and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's like,
No, it's
yeah.
definitely one of those moments where you see in movies where it's like, kill me.
Well,
Kill me, you
it's
know.
just like we got to make sure the villain's a villain. That's the type
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
Which they did the job. So with
Oh
all
no.
that,
This was the line. If you can't change the world, change yourself, and it implies becoming a murderer. And I'm like, bro, like, bro.
that is true. And that is after him getting his dad wife's revenge. I'm like, cool resolution.
I don't know. That specific scene was like, it was cool that it was very intense, but I wasn't like, I didn't feel anything from like, I felt like, oh wow, this is like Jesus Christ, this is a lot, but I wasn't like, I struggled.
Emotionally
Yeah,
swayed,
I struggled to be like in an intense moment if it like doesn't like emotionally follow certain things, where it kind of felt like he was just like supposed to be like sociopathic, and it kind of was. It's more like when they just go, oh, he's sociopathic, so he does this. That's kind of sometimes how I feel like certain lines get drawn. Whereas
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you can draw more lines to how that goes. So I think that part was why I struggled to connect with that a bit.
No, I get that. For me, I was weirded out. I was just pissed, I think, which I feel like it was their goal anyways. I also was kind of whatever on Chiyuki's response on that specific episode.
I mean that episode was trying to like mock the nature of humanity and its weakness and truly futility of like at the end of the day humanity kind of is incapable of like true change, and so you should like chase your
Yeah.
inner darkness kind of stuff.
No, but not even that. I was like, not to extend the conversation over this episode much longer, but like when Chiki tries to prevent the guy from like stabbing the body pieces that are like the
Oh, yeah.
discs. And I'm like, dude, like just get it over with. Like
I mean, it's the whole like Chiyuki's the
yeah,
model of humanity.
yeah, she's the representative of like kindness that we humans should have in a sense. But yeah, I feel like that was prolonged for that
Well,
scene.
I think the reason why it feels prolonged is it almost A, it feels inevitable, and B, it doesn't feel like there's like a purpose of holding on to that because we've not really had a great deep conversation about it beforehand. It's kind of just been like we hit a lot of the same notes in the same
Yeah.
episodes, which they're not invaluable. It's not like pointless to do that, but it is like you do want evolution, right? You do want
Yeah.
evolution and change and stuff like that. And so when you do it just for the sixth time, you kind of just like, okay, and you can, that's why it does feel pointless, is because you're not actually evolving and changing on it. Whereas I feel like with like Link Click, you're kind of like the nature of humanity, the things we value. It's like I love the thing about Link Click, or spoilers for Link Click, but it's like at the very end where it's kind of like, look at all these lives you're ruining and shambling. Like these are all the beauties and things that like these few 30 seconds of like in the photo. It's like these are whole people's universes, their lives. Like and I think that gets lost in the sauce a little, or not shown properly enough in Death Parade.
Yeah, there's like we mentioned throughout multiple times, like with this discussion here, that like it's a show that certainly feels that it has much more it could stand for, whereas I do personally like appreciate the parts it already has, and well obviously that's why I kind of you know recommended this for you to see and kind of get your opinions on the goods and the bads and everything this show's going for it regardless. But yeah, there are certainly and now upon rewatching it, obviously, some like loose ends and like details that could have been more fine tuned at this point, or like a literal need for like a season 2 or more episodes.
For me, you can really tell they played it safe. Like I think that's the big noticeable thing. Like I have no like I've mentioned this example before. Like if you use a merit system for this show, or I mean, if you use a demerit system for Death Parade, it's going to be very high. But if you use a merit system, it's a bit more like questionable, because I think that the show doesn't do anything necessarily wrong, but I think it's because it's actively trying to avoid doing anything wrong, and in doing so, it struggles to really find that ground to stand on. Okay. Where I'm like, I think that the base story and the base ideas and the base premise are all great, but it doesn't travel into murkier waters. You know, it doesn't like, you know, for me, I'm always like, all right, it should take you on a journey. And I feel like this takes me from like, you know, it takes me like a mile down the street. like, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the trip. It was good. It looked pretty. It was all great. But I do feel like I was like, I never left what I always feel like if in my preconception of what a piece of art was, I don't ever get outside of that preconception. I'm always like, it never really challenged me. But what did it do something valuable still? No, I think it still did something valuable. I just think that when a show doesn't challenge you but has a lot of other things going on for it, you do feel like this emptiness and hole that exists in there, where it's kind of like, even with a season 2, I think when you look at season 1 as a standalone, you are asking like, okay, why did we take a step back in certain moments, and kind of why, like this show, like we watched 2 12-episode shows this month. One of them does a fuckload of stuff in every episode, and the other one does like one thing. And not that doing one thing is wrong, but I feel like there should be more details in that one thing. You know, that's my main thing, is I feel like there are a couple of things where I'm like, go more into the humanity, or spend some time with Decim, or like build the world and use the world. I think the main thing is like using that world really was something that the show really was scared to do and didn't want to commit to just yet.
That is true.
I think committing to the ideas were what it wanted to hold back on.
Yeah. Because we did see a lot of interesting elements to the world, like the archive rooms, the billiard room.
Oh yeah, they're all well thought out of like, oh, this is how it should look and feel, but it's
it was not utilized.
Yeah.
No, I do feel that. But with that kind of being our general overlook, how would you describe this show for our audiences out there?
So the weird and fucked up thing is that, like, first of all, this show has like nearly like 1 million something, like over 1.5 million like people like on MyAnimeList like the show or whatever the fuck it is. I can't remember what it's called. Like, or a member of the show. And yet it's a show that's consistently not talked about a lot, is forgotten. And my fucked up reaction is I understand why. Because I think it does a lot of things that are very memorable when you've just seen it, but it does not stick with you because it doesn't stand on anything very specific. And I think that it is a great reference point. It is a great reference point as a show, but ultimately it really struggles to cement itself as a show you're going to come back to and talk about, because it is doing things well, but things that are not unique. And I think that always will, in the attention landscape, be a difficult thing to do. Like, you know, be a staying show with a lot of power. And I think it is a show that deserves like a decent rating, but it is a show that also I struggle to have strong opinions on. Like, it's really hard to have strong opinions about the show. Like, it's even like, I don't even really like, on my negative critiques of the show, I wasn't bothered by it while watching it. Like, when I have a negative critiques of a show, it usually to some extent relates to like difficulties in watching it to some extent, or like, you know, my lack of enjoyment or things that I disconnect with from an artistic standpoint. I didn't really disconnect with it artistically. I was just nitpicking on the ideas of like, why does something feel unsettling in how I'm feeling the show? Like, I enjoyed watching it. I think it went well, and I
almost like, you know, playing the safe boundaries than like trying to push the premise or like other parts.
Yeah, Death Parade sits in a weird middle ground where it is an anime original that absolutely has a clear identity, but does not do something big with that identity. And that is a weird place to be, where you've established such great and cool things that other shows would dream about, but then not do something more with it. I think that's the part of it that goes, oh, that's weird. I'm not necessarily disappointed. I'm disappointed there's no season 2, but I'm not disappointed in the show, but I am more confused as to how it was trying to play so safe despite having crazy, like, you know, action shots and weird looks and, you know, wild character designs. Like, how did it do all of that, but then play it safe on the story? It's a very confusing show because of that.
That is true, yeah.
But again, like, if you ask me, is it above 8? I'm like, oh yeah. And then I don't know, like, I don't fully get why. Like, you know, I would not recommend the show, but like, you know, like, when I like don't remember what I'm talking to someone about, and like, would you recommend me a show? And it doesn't come up in my registry at all.
Yeah,
But if someone asks me about it, I'd be like, oh, I liked it. So it is like a weird way of how I perceive it.
that is a solid way to put it. I feel like it's definitely one of those shows where it's like the art, like the premise, the world, like it's all this like really unique, out of the ordinary kind of design, which within itself pushes the boundaries for certain things and like animations, lighting, stuff like that. But then within the story end, basically is not pushing those same boundaries and possibly reach to the heights it could have reached if they did so. Yeah, and that does kind of.
I mean, does the show stick with you more than me? Because it's almost like a show that I would like forgot I'm watching, and I'd smile when I go, like, oh yeah, I did like that show, but I did forget that I watched it.
Like it would stick with me only because I feel like Death Billiards is much more impactful as being like a standalone
Came out of
short
nowhere
movie.
type shit. Yeah.
Came out of nowhere and had all this like crazy design and art and animation, and it was just like a standalone thing. So like in terms of my bias, like because I've gotten into the series after watching the short when it first came out. Not something that I'm used to in the anime world back then. The premise is interesting, the design is really cool, and to be honest, the short movie has that thriller to it.
Yeah,
So
much more than the actual show.
that's what I'd say. Like the short movie actually does fit like the definition of like psycho thriller, where like the series is much short ended on the thriller end. So like all of that, and like when you get exposed to the first time, I was like, dang, like this is gonna be like really good. And then watching the show afterwards, like I was pleased to a certain degree, and obviously like how much experienced you are with animes when you watch certain shows play effect on how they remain in your head. And that's why I end up noticing much more subtle details and maybe like lack of when I rewatched it this time around. But yeah, I'd say if someone asked me to recommend like a like you mentioned like like an anime that's not like hella long or something like that, this could have came up in my mind, especially because of its art style and like you know um animation style basically. But I would not go out of my way and be like, yeah, like Orb, like 86.
Yeah.
Like it would not be in those realms, but I do think I do still favor it a bit more than you.
My problem is that
obviously,
not that I dislike it. Like I think to be clear, I do not dislike the show. It is that it is weirdly unforgettable, or not unforgettable. It's weirdly forgettable.
really forgettable.
Like for me, like
it lacks to hold the place.
I like Tatami Galaxy less than this show. Oh, I remember Tatami Galaxy. That shit's ingrained in my brain whether I like it or
Yeah.
not. Like I think that's the weird thing about it in a show that seems like you would be more memorable if you understand what I mean. Like from a visual standpoint, I get it, but
Yeah.
there are other shows like Death Parade is the thing, right?
Yeah.
That is the only reason why. It's Tatami Galaxy. I don't think there's a lot of shows like Tatami Galaxy. So that's the reason why it's like it feels like it's positioned weirdly in my mind, where it's like I don't have a great place to set it down.
I'll put it like this. I feel like the short movie would and is sticking with me more than the series itself.
Isn't that weird though? That does
It
feel
is,
weird.
it
right?
is, yeah,
It's
it
because
is.
it came out of nowhere and it's a whole like, oh, this is so different and unique, and kind of
Yeah.
like the action shots for the time was like it looks really good. Like the rotoscoping is, I think the rotoscoping looks great. It's just weird, you know. It's weird to say that about a show that is generally celebrated
Yeah.
and that I don't necessarily have strong opinions about. It's what's weird is like I always tell people this, where it's like Nier Automata is like one of the most divisive games in like all
Yeah.
of gaming. I don't have a strong opinion on Nier Automata, and I'm just kind of like I
That
feel
is
weird
also
for not
true.
having a strong opinion about this. Like I usually do have a strong opinion about this, but I'm like I have things I can nitpick and I have things I like, and that's really it. I'm like that's it.
Yeah.
No.
No, I kind of agree. Like me thinking, like even going back to it, I realized like the movie did stick with me more than the series itself, other than like Chuki's moments and stuff like that. But yeah, I do feel like that sums up like pretty well on what what my take is, and obviously what your take is. So
I think Death Parade is a very valuable reference point. And I think you should watch it because of that.
I feel like it's a really great show where like it could be your like starting point, and then anything getting better from there on is like actually a really solid pick for someone to watch.
It's a very anime.
Yeah,
It is
that is
very
true.
anime. So I think there's some interesting stuff you can take away from that because it really leans into it. Like it definitely leans into it, but it doesn't, for me, leave an imprint because of that. I don't know. I've probably watched just too much anime. It's probably the problem.
Well, we both do, so there's nothing we can do about that. And that being said, that kind of wraps up our like opinions about Death Parade and brings us to our shared watch, which is called Sakamichi no Apollon, or
Kids on the Slope.
and
No Japanese names here.
and we'll see you on that episode.
Okay, later.